I think of you as a lifeline. You have been honestly, you have been a fan of these and have gone above and beyond in terms of organizing questions and organizing interviews. And I know that the games mean something to you, and that means something to me. So I really appreciate you.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Geek Peek. Today I'm talking with Dave Justus. Dave is the writer of one of my favorite mobile games of all time called Lifeline. Lifeline is a text adventure where you speak to a stranded astronaut and help them during their adventure. And it's all text, just choices and text, and it's very, very fun. And the story is very, very good. The first game came out and it was amazing. I loved playing it. All my friends played it at work. We had a lot of discussions about the possible outcomes of what Taylor could do once we help them and not really make the right choice or do make the right choice. So Dave wrote all of it. There are more games that released afterwards. And now, after a while that the company has become independent and released a sequel called Lifeline Beside You in Time, I wanted to catch Dave to talk about his creative journey and also answer some fan questions. This interview spoke to me personally as a writer because I see myself in a lot of the things that Dave said during this interview. If you are a writer, I encourage you to watch this or listen to it. I enjoyed this interview very, very much. So, without further ado, enjoy the interview. Dave Justus, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to be able to talk to you. I want to tell you a short story. In 2015, I started working in the high-tech industry. And one day, I came to the office and everyone was on their phones, and I didn't know why. And after a few minutes of trying to investigate what people were doing on their phones, I got introduced to Taylor. And that was my introduction to Lifeline, the first Lifeline, which you wrote. My entire office, all of them, were playing on it, which was mind-blowing. So
To me too.
So collectively, I think I want to start this interview with thank you for creating something so amazing. Playing Lifeline games is one of the little joys in my video game history. So I think I speak for all of us when I say thank you, but also keep going. So before we talk about like Lifeline itself and also ask you fan questions, we have a lot of them. I do want to take you back to before Lifeline. Who was Dave back then? What was your life like before Lifeline?
Well, I did a lot fewer interviews, for one thing. At about the age of 8, I started buying comic books, and I very quickly saw that there were credits in there, and someone was a writer, and so someone had to put all the words in those balloons, and I realized I was like, that's what I want to do. So I made some stabs at it over the course of my life in high school and post-college. And then, I had been working at a comic shop since the day I turned 18 at various comic shops. And through that had met, a bunch of different creators. And then finally in 2010, I had the opportunity to write 4 pages of House of Mystery for DC Vertigo. As part of an Exquisite Corpse issue where there were several writers and we wrote each other into corners, and then the next writer had to try and figure their way out of that. And that was a lot of fun. And that was, 25 years it took from deciding that's what I wanted to do to actually making it a reality. And it was fantastic. It was everything that I had dreamed it would be. And the rough thing is when you're writing is that, you get your foot in the door and then you think, finally, this is it. I've made it. But there's a lot of different doors, and getting a foot into one doesn't necessarily mean you can get through the next one. So, as a freelancer, I kept kind of pounding the pavement and submitting stuff, and you hear no a lot, but the good thing was I kept kind of circulating with different types of writers and making friends. And so when the opportunity to do Lifeline came up, how that happened was that I was friends with Daryl Gregory, who is a great novelist, and he had been asked to write it and didn't have the time, so he suggested me. And at that point, I had done very little writing professionally, but they took a chance on me, and that's how I got my foot into that door. So pre Lifeline, I had very little on my resume that might have pointed the direction to video game writer, but it was an opportunity to try something new and different, and I'm so glad that I did.
Awesome. Would you say that your process for writing for something like Lifeline differs? Well, of course it does differ, but do you think it differs a whole lot than like writing a novel or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's writing Lifeline, the Lifeline games that I've done so far, it's entirely dialogue. It's 100% someone or someone's having a conversation with the player. When you are writing a comic book, the only thing that the reader is seeing is dialogue, but in the script for it, I have to do a lot of description for the artist and the colorist and the letterer to let them know, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I think this might be paced, or this is the props that we need in this panel, or this is, and then of course, when you're doing a novel, you have to supply everything. You have to do the narration as well as the dialogue. And, you are hoping that the reader is envisioning the same thing that you are, just given the words that you've put on the page. So yeah, the Lifeline games are very different in that way, in that all you have is what's coming out of the characters' mouths in order to paint a picture of the setting, and what's going on and the time that it takes for those things to go on. So it was a new language to try and learn. Definitely different from comics or novels. Yeah. Okay.
So I know, I think you said so in the past that you were using a software called Twine, mm-hmm. to do like the dialogue structure, and then like a developer would like import that into an app or something like that. What was it like to have like all those branching decisions? And when I think about it, I'm like, okay, you need to remember this decision, and then you need to call back to it at some point in the game. And then, but if you did something else, then a different kind of dialogue should appear here. Like, so how did you like go into this challenge and say like, okay, this is how it's going to work? Twine helps in terms of like helping you set variables and stuff like that. But what was your process to managing all of those outcomes?
I was learning as I went. I would read the Twine wiki and sort of learn about the different things you could do and the different variables that you could call out, and then try and figure out, can I incorporate that? Do I need to incorporate that? How do I incorporate that? So it was, as much as I was writing, I was also reading at that point, and just trying to figure out this new program. And I've said before that I was working in Twine 1, which I think is for, people like me who don't really understand coding. They had come up with Twine 2, and I tried to work in that, but they had stripped out a lot of the stuff that was for, the lay person. And it was I think Twine 2 is much more geared toward people who understand the coding. Thankfully, Twine does some of the stuff you're talking about, as far as like, it'll let you know when you haven't offered choices, or you haven't tied up a loose end, or, if you have an if-then kind of statement, it says, well, you haven't finished this. You haven't provided the then for the if-then. So, thankfully, you're not navigating completely blind. It does sort of nudge you. But yeah, I don't know if you've seen it. We've had it out there in various places, but the map of that initial Lifeline game is just ridiculous, because I started out, trying to take all the little squares in Twine and line them up in a way that I could go back and look at them. And then it just starts sprawling all over the place and becomes just this multi-headed dragon of a layout. And I have learned since then to be much more organized in Twine. The stuff I'm doing now is a lot easier to go in and find something that I may be looking for a month after that I wrote it. It's a lot easier than that first game was, where I was really flying blind for a lot of it.
Okay, wow, that's so cool. Okay, so a lot of games came after the first Lifeline, and I want to ask you, like, as sort of a general question, like, how was your ideation process for thinking about the genre of the next game? Like, was that something like that you and the rest of the team set out, like you had like this list of prompts, this is what we're gonna do, or was there some kind of logical wider world reasoning behind that?
Are you asking like as far as something like Bloodline, where it's okay? Yeah, at the time that we started working on Bloodline, we really didn't know how big the original Lifeline was going to be. So we thought we had done the work on Lifeline and were able to put it out into the market and kind of see that people were interested in it, but we didn't realize how big Taylor was going to loom as far as a character and a space setting that we had created for that. So when we started talking about sequels, we thought, well, let's try this in a different genre and see, does it work the same there? Is it better? Is it worse? So I started coming up with this urban fantasy setting and a brand new character, but very quickly realized, like, oh, we can tie this in. We can use the same antagonists in this and show people that it's part of a larger universe. And then as we went on with stuff like Crisis Line and Flatline, we had the Greens as the bad guys, but we got to use them in a number of different ways. So yeah, a lot of it was just kind of seeing, if it works in a science fiction sense, can it be made to work for other types of stories? And so much of it was just, was 3 minutes and then Big Fish, saying, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Throw something at the wall and see what sticks.
Okay.
So it was, honestly, that kind of freedom does not occur often in a job. So it was really exciting to be allowed to do that.
Okay. So, like, as a total fantasy role-playing game nerd, I think Arica is one of my favorite characters of all time.
Wow.
Especially when, like, there's this moment when she's like, oh, and you're gonna walk these however miles with me in solidarity, right? And I'm like, no, but you will. and I was like, it was so fun that she's like kind of breaking the fourth wall. Like, and you're gonna do it too, right? It's not like it's not. I'm a person. I'm not just a video game character, and like things like that moment really tied in that kind of feeling that wow, this is actually a conversation that I would probably have with a real human being, and like I love that.
Well, I appreciate that. She kind of gets forgotten about, I think. When people are very Taylor centric, a lot of Lifeline fans, but I love Arica, and I'm happy to hear that there are other people out there who love her as much as I do.
Okay, so you raced for this, and I'm sure people in the comments of this interview on YouTube or wherever they can comment when it comes out will comment how much they want more Arica content. I'm sure there are many, because I think maybe we'll even get to that in the fan questions. I think I've seen one that asks specifically about Arica, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Okay.
So I think you had this kind of start point where you started like publishing those games initially with Big Fish, and then afterwards there was this kind of disconnect time where no Lifeline games were actually being released, and then there was this announcement that you and the rest of the team are actually taking back the reins and are going to continue publishing the games. So before we get to talk about other games, like Beside You in Time, which was the first game that 3 Minutes published after that period, tell me a bit about what are the plans for those old games, like something like games that were released under Lifeline Universe that no longer exists, or other games that were published by initially Big Fish. Are they going to get like update treatment or stuff like that to adhere to new kind of devices of today?
Well, so I am not the guy who does the coding. I leave up to Colin and Mars because they are geniuses at it. But definitely the plan has been to go into those old Lifeline games, primarily the Green series, and kind of spiff them up, make sure they're as good as can be, and then, draw people's attention to them again. One of the great things that we've been able to do just in the last month or so is to put Lifeline Plus, the original version, on Apple Arcade. And that has gone very well. It really kind of surpassed everybody's expectations. And we would love to continue to put the following games on there as well. So that's a conversation that is taking place. But as far as other things, like I know that there are fans of Whiteout, and who are wondering, they got to see a little bit of Whiteout too, and then that kind of folded and went away. I can't make any promises, but we do have those materials. So that's something that we can be looking at in the future. And then as far as the stuff that was in Lifeline universe, I honestly can't tell you what, I don't know whether we have that stuff or not. I don't know what our holdings contain in terms of the universe stuff. The Lifeline game that was in there, Bad Astronaut, we have elected to not make it part of the canon because so few people were able to see it. And there is a walkthrough of it that's available on YouTube, but because it never got out of beta, which was unfortunately Lifeline Universe never got out of beta, so the majority of fans never got to play those games, and so we thought it would kind of be unfair to have this missing chapter of their lives. So all of that stuff has been kind of shunted into a pocket universe, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, as in terms of the future, we want to make sure that the old games are, spiffed up to the best of our abilities, as we are also making new games to continue to excite people. Okay,
that's very cool.
That was probably more rambling than it could have been.
No, it's like you did give an answer, so we're all good. Okay, so I think we'll jump to fan questions because there are many, and I want to get to a lot of them. Okay, the first fan question that we have is from Cookie, and Cookie asks, will the protagonists of each Lifeline game cross paths in the future games?
Oh, when we were many years younger and just had nothing but whiteboards and time, we were trying to build toward a big Avengers style meetup of all the characters. Because
the Lifeline cinematic universe.
Yeah, we were all just as excited by that idea as I think the fans are. There's a lot to consider in terms of that. The games can only be so long for a number of reasons, and it's kind of hard to give enough service to 4 different characters or 5 different characters in the amount of space we have. So I have done a lot of thinking about how to do an Avengers style game that would make fans of all the different characters happy. And I haven't cracked that riddle yet, but it's not on the immediate horizon, but it's something that we've been thinking about for a long, long time. So I don't want to get anyone's hopes up immediately, but yeah, it's definitely something that has been kicked around and I think continues to be kicked around.
Okay, cool. We'll see. The next question is from Justine, and Justine asks, what are your thoughts on Belgian-French comics compared to American comics? Any favorites?
Oh boy. I will have to admit that I don't really know any Belgian-French comics. Okay. I don't feel equipped to answer this question. What European comics I have seen, which generally is a lot of like the humanoid stuff. I love them because they're larger, because they take risks, because the art is just gorgeous and cinematic. but in terms of specific Belgium stuff, I can't say that I have any knowledge of that, unfortunately. Sorry, Justin.
Okay. The next question is from Linnea. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Linnea, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. The question is, we all know Taylor is the fandom's favorite character, but who is your favorite?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, again, I've got a soft spot for Arica because she is the redheaded stepchild of the Lifeline family, I think. She's a prickly pear, and it's hard to get to know her, but I think once you've earned her trust, she's really pretty cool to hang out with. Yeah, I love all, they're all my children. I love Wynn, and I love Alex, and I love, even the ones that I didn't write on. Obviously I was very involved in their creation and their lives. And it's always great to come back home to Taylor, but yeah, I think I would probably say Arik is my number one.
Love to see it. Okay, the next question is from Alex75X. And the question is, other than Taylor, which character's story are you most excited to continue?
I do want to show more of the Lanfears, not just Arica, but kind of what her dad was up to, which if you follow all the right paths in Beside You in Time, you get a little bit of that. And if people didn't know that, well, now you know.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Well, go hunting for it. I don't want to hide it too well. But yeah, there's I think some interesting backstory. There's also kind of the stuff about the Tunguska meteorite that gets talked about in Crisis Line. I think that's some interesting backstory that we want to play with. So there's a lot of space, I think, to kind of show how the threads are tied together, as far as some of the Green Universe stuff goes. So I hope that we have a chance to do that in the right way.
Okay, I love it. Okay, the next question is from ArtificialJealousy, and the question is, what was the most difficult part of making the Lifeline games?
The most difficult part? It's a good question. I think that I could say a few different things that were, like the first one had to be written so quickly, which I could say was difficult, but also because of that, I didn't have any time to second guess. And so I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And so in that sense, it wasn't that difficult because it just had to happen. I think this will sound corny, but I think it's true. As the games got bigger and as the fan base got bigger, the hardest part for me was being very conscious of not wanting to let people down. And especially coming back with Beside You in Time after taking a few years off, I really was anxious as far as like, I want this to be worth it to people. I want people to see this Taylor and T2 as the characters they remember and fell in love with. And I didn't want to screw it up. I didn't want the fans to feel like we had taken a wrong turn. So I think maybe that would be my answer, is that we're so aware of how much love there is for Taylor and for Lifeline that we just want to keep doing as well as we can to make people happy.
Okay, so would you say that in Beside You in Time, there's is there any specific thing that you were worried about in terms of like coming back with this game and meeting people's expectations of Taylor and T2?
I knew how it was going to end, and I won't spoil that for anyone who hasn't played it, but I knew that there was something had to happen at the end that was inevitable, and I wanted to make sure that before we got to that ending, people felt like they had spent a good amount of time with it's so hard to do this without
with the characters.
Yeah, I wanted people to feel like they had gotten everything they needed out of the experience before the ending. So maybe the game even is weighted more in the direction of that character. And I have seen more than one fan say that it's nice to play it with Taylor, but taking some other excursions make it different and better.
Okay.
So
you did a very well job just now, just so you know. Okay.
It's tricky. It's awfully tricky.
The next question is from Ebele. Okay. Are you still working on the Whiteout series? If so, are there any updates you can share?
Like I said, we do have those materials. I personally, because I did not do any of the writing on them, I have less of an idea of what might eventually become of that. But it would not surprise me if sometime in the future Whiteout 2 showed up. But I'm not the one who has control over that, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. And the next question is from Leon. And the question is, will we one day get some Taylor plushies or action figures? By the way, love your work. Heart.
Heart. Well, thank you. That's definitely something to consider. Back in the day, there were some T-shirts and some magnets and a few things that the Big Fish produced. Now that it is in our hands, there's really only 3 of us doing anything with the games at this point. And I think that we would love to have some stuff that people can buy. And I don't know what our best way of going about that would be. But I would love a Taylor plushie. I would love a Taylor t-shirt. I would love all sorts of stuff. I would not be ashamed to wear any of that. So, but it's not something that we have. There's nothing in the works that I can tell you about at this point. But it's certainly something to be brought up the next time we have a conference call, just to say, hey, people are still interested.
Okay. So. Let me tell you, the moment Taylor plushie is available for purchase, it will join my my background over there.
Yeah. Well, you will be among the first to know, I'm sure.
Perfect. Okay, the next question is from Eric Zhang. And the question is, okay, we talked about Lifeline Universe. Will you bring back the stories from the old Lifeline Universe app back? Whiteout 2, Bad Astronaut, Whipping Fog, etc. If yes, what is the progress made on it? And how long would it take to bring back all the other stories and journeys? So I think we talked about the first part of this question, but if you had to like measure in time how long it would take to take those writing materials and kind of make them your own, what would your answer be to that?
As far as stuff like Silent Night and just spiffing up the other titles,
Yes.
I mean, it's all in the plans. You know, again, the universe stuff I don't think we're really going to touch, but I think our question right now is, you know, do we go to the next Taylor game, or do we go to Bloodline? You know, as it was released. They're all going to happen. You know, again, there are only 3 of us who are doing everything that has to be done. And as the writer, I'm more of my concentration is what's coming next as opposed to what already happened. So I'm probably not the best of the 3 of us to answer that, but I know that we're working on it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, the next question is from Acacia. The names will be written on the screen. Sorry if I botched your name. Will we ever learn more about Regina, like who she is as a person, green, her past, etc.?
I hope so. Again, in talking about the history of the Greens and then Tunguska and all the stuff like that, yeah, the Green Queen is definitely an important character in the Lifeline mythos. Whether there is just the single Regina or whether that is a title that has been passed down, and what might become of Regina in the future. All of that was written on a whiteboard at one point several years ago. So there's story to be told.
You raised an interesting point here. I did not think about the option that Regina might be a title. And now that opened up an entire... That's very cool.
There you go. I still got it.
Okay. The next question is from Leon. And Leon asks, do you have a lifeline in your personal life?
I think I have been very lucky in that I have gotten a lot of support from friends and also from my parents. The Beside You in Time, I don't know how many people saw this in the credits, but I dedicated it to my dad, who passed away at the beginning of 2022. He held on for, I think, a lot of months, asking me if the game was done. And I was finally able to tell him in December that it was. And just the relief in his voice, because he knew that I had been struggling. He knew that I had been blocked on it. And he was just so happy to know that it was done. And I felt really glad that I was able to give him that sense of relief before he left. So, you know, he was very much a lifeline for me. My mom continues to be.
Wow.
And yeah, like I say, I think that I have really lucked out in terms of just people who have seen what I'm trying to do and support it. My wife is amazing. She, you know, anytime anything happens that, you know, I publish anything, she posts about it and organizes people to come to comic signings and yeah. And I mean, in a very real sense, I think Lifeline fans are a huge lifeline for me.
Mhm.
You know, that I can go check in on the Discord, and the fact that there's still that kind of activity on this game 8 years later, 8 years after the first game was published, that people are still so excited about it, and that, you know, we have so many questions that were submitted to you from people who are still so excited about it. That's huge. That's yeah. I you know, all I can say is that in every arena, I really feel like I lucked out.
Okay. I love that you mentioned your dad and the way he waited for the game to be ready. I think that's such an amazing thing to connect on with your parent. I can say for me, I have dabbled in writing fantasy, and my parents don't even think that it could be something. Like, I am a software engineer, and that for them is the thing. Writing is not the thing. They don't even know if writing could be a thing. And I can see their point of view. But to have like that special thing to connect with your father about a piece of writing in such a way that he cared so much about it, I think that's so special, and I'm so happy you had that. And also, in terms of community, I'm like, I've been on the Discord server, I think from the moment it got started, and even though I don't like frequent conversations, but I always keep an eye out on news and stuff like that, and I believe so many of us do love these games and like have this special place in our hearts to escape from this world into this like special little world that we get to spend with Taylor or with Arika or with some other characters in the games, and yeah, this is just amazing.
I mean, it means you know, I think of you as a lifeline. You know, you have been, honestly, you have been a fan of these and have gone above and beyond in terms of organizing questions and organizing interviews. And, you know, I know that the games mean something to you, and that means something to me. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll do some more fan questions here. So the next question is from Scott, and the question is: do you personally feel like the non-visual method of telling your stories makes it more immersive for the player and or more true to your own creative vision?
Sort of as I said before, the trick of it is to that in these games, all that there is dialogue. And so short of having a character stop and describe every blade of grass, you know, you want to give description, but in a way that it still feels like you're talking to a human being. And so in that sense, I think that there is a line to walk between giving the player nothing and in being way too descriptive. So I have tried as hard as I can to put enough imagery in there that people can sort of build it up in their minds as to what the character is seeing or what the character is experiencing, but to still be able to leave that open to interpretation. Like, I think, you know, for example, with Arika, anyone who's been in the Pacific Northwest will have some idea of the places that she's seeing and visiting. And if you haven't, then I hope I've done enough work that the game still works for you. So, yeah, in terms of, you know, it being a purely purely textual thing as opposed to having visuals. You know, that was what we set out to do with the first one. Again, kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what worked, and it seemed to work for people. And so that's kind of the way that we continued. And again, I didn't really get even to play Lifeline Universe, so I don't know when they incorporated visuals. I don't really know what that did for the gameplay. Mm-hmm. I don't know how people felt about suddenly having images of characters and locations that they had, you know, been able to form their own images of in their minds prior to that. So that's, I mean, that would be an interesting question. Did you get to play any of Universe?
I think I played part of the Whiteout piece that was there, which was kind of a preview, but it never got really continued. Right. And I think there was also another piece which was more with graphics. I think it was something about Regina, but I don't really remember. Or something about like the Greens as a whole, but not like specifically Taylor related. Yeah, not sure. I think the thing I recollect the most from Universe was that piece of Whiteout. Whiteout 2, I think. Yeah, but other than that, no solid memories from other graphic things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that the question that you've asked is something that I would be curious in terms of people who got to play Universe, like what was their experience going from purely text to something visual, whether it was an improvement or whether they, you know, this isn't what I pictured T2 looking like. So I don't know.
Yeah. And I also think there's an element of writing skill here, because like talking about a game which is purely text, like I've never felt even in Beside You in Time, I can imagine in my mind from the conversation with Taylor how the rooms kind of look, but I've never felt during like dialogue that Taylor was feeding me extra details that telling me how the room looks, and it didn't feel unnatural. Like I'm sitting on this gray bench and in this black room, like it wasn't, there wasn't anything like that that felt like out of place, and I'm like, is that too much? No, there was nothing like that. So I think it's like treading like this balance of describing, and then also like giving the player a sense of like normal conversation.
Good. Yeah. I'm happy to hear that, because that really is something that, you know, effort goes into that. So
yeah. Okay. The next question is from Derry. The question is, how much time has canonically passed since Taylor left Earth from their perspective? As someone who's been playing and following along since 2015, 2016, I am now worried about Taylor having spent nearly a decade stranded in space.
Wow.
Derry, this is such a good question.
It's such a good question that I don't have a good answer to. You know, the Silent Night takes place like 3 days after the original Lifeline. All of it is happening pretty quickly for Taylor. I think there's some, you know, I'm a big comics reader, and Marvel does this thing where they have basically a sliding timeline, so that everything started about 7 years ago, no matter what what point you pick up a Marvel comic. The Fantastic Four took off into space for the first time about 7 years ago. And I kind of feel like Lifeline operates the same way, which is that Taylor took off into space 6 months ago, a year ago. No matter when you start playing it, it wasn't as long ago as 2015. And I just, if I could produce games as quickly as they're happening to Taylor, I would be a rich but very, very tired person. So I'm gonna have to ask people to just sort of fudge the timeline.
Yeah, there's this time magic that no matter how long it's been, Taylor is still not stranded a decade in space.
Right. Like there are fixed events in the canon, like Tunguska and if we put a date to something, then it happened then. But otherwise, it was just a little while ago.
Cool. Okay, the next question is from Kepler. And the question is, to me, as a big space exploration nerd, one of Lifeline's biggest strengths is that, with Taylor's exposition, the settings feel incredibly real and often personal. Like when Taylor goes through the barracks in Beside You in Time. Did you do any research on real space missions to achieve this, or work with anyone with experience such as an astronaut? As an extra question, do you think Taylor and their Lifeline ever got to meet like we talked about? Thank you.
So I did a decent amount of reading in terms of like what's life like on a space station. Anytime there's something about like recycling urine or, what the weight of personal objects is that you can bring on a space flight. That's all me reading various sources. I have not sat down and talked with an astronaut, although that would be an amazing thing to do.
Any astronauts in the crowd?
Yeah, hit me up. I don't even know how I would go about doing that. Although, I'm sure I could drive to Houston. It's not that far from me, and talk to some astronauts there. But no, I think I'm better at reading than I am at interviewing. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question was, do you think Taylor and their Lifeline ever got to meet like we talked about?
Well, not yet. But Taylor's mission is far from over.
The next question is from Suit. And the question is, if T2 had ended up surviving, rest in peace, may their memory be a blessing, would they have chosen a different, more human name or nickname? If so, what? Or would they still have gone by whatever Taylor's first name is, Taylor?
That's a good question. I mean, they let themselves be called T2 the whole time. So, I think the universe is big enough for more than one Taylor.
Okay.
So that's a good question. I don't know. What would you call him?
Actually, I have never thought about T2 as anything other than T2. It just like, that's the name. That feels right. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I'm kind of with you there. I had to come up with a way to differentiate them, and that's basically the way I thought about them, as being T2. So,
okay. The next question is from Katy, and the question is, aside from the ending that can get tripped near the start, was there any plans for an ending where T2 survived? Okay, so that's another spoilery question.
Yeah, honestly, there was not. That was always going to be T2's fate. was to not make it out of the space station, but to be able to die as a human. I thought this is the proper arc, is to gain that redemption that I think T2 deserved. So even from the beginning stages of writing Beside You in Time, I knew that was going to be it. Plus, it's so difficult to write two different characters who you can never use pronouns for.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've done this for a game and a half now, and I got to be finished. So
I think there's something so cool, but also something so challenging about the fact that Taylor can be what the person playing the game needs, and Taylor is written in such a way that someone might refer to Taylor as one thing, and someone might refer to Taylor as another thing. And I think that's such an amazing feat of writing that not get a lot of credit, but you should get a lot of credit for that. It's so difficult.
Most of the time it was a fun challenge. And then a few times I kind of felt like I was writing myself into a hole. But I think it worked out.
Also, you know what? You raised an interesting thing. When the first Lifeline came out and Taylor was introduced, do you feel like the decision to make Taylor non-binary was something that came after the first Lifeline game came out, or was that something that the community kind of resonated with, and then that was how this was going to go into the future with other Taylor games?
That was actually one of the very few things that that 3 Minute presented me with when they asked me to write it. They said, we know we want to do science fiction. We know we want it to last for about 3 days of gameplay. And we know we want the protagonist to not be named as either male or female. Okay. And so beyond those three things, they said, write whatever you want. If you want it to be hard sci-fi, if you want it to be space opera, do whatever you want. But these are the things we think are important. So it was definitely a choice that we made, and definitely something that people responded to. And what was really interesting was in the first few days before people really realized that other people were having different experiences, it was very interesting to read, some of the reviews and see, it was probably about half and half people referring to Taylor as male versus female. And then I think it sort of became clear to people that, it's never stated. So I felt like that was pretty cool to kind of organically watch that realization wash over people.
I will say, from my own first 2015 experience, I did not notice until I finished the game and went online, I did not notice that it was never stated what Taylor's gender was. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I always considered Taylor as male. Mm-hmm. That was my initial experience with the first game. But then after it it was revealed that there is no official canon or something like that, or that the official canon is that Taylor is non-binary. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Now I have to play the game again. And then I played the game again. And then I realized, like, wow, it really is never stated. How could I miss this?
I think that was a lot of people's experience, though.
Yeah, it was
like,
so cool.
Yeah, they played it the first time, kind of in a vacuum, and then connecting to the community, they realized, oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. The next question is from Heitan. Heitan. And the question is, a music playlist was introduced in the production, and I'm wondering what songs would be on the playlist if Taylor themselves were to make one.
Oh boy. That's the sort of question I feel like I need a week or so to put together a proper mixtape. I can't do that on the fly.
Okay, let me make it easy for you. Give us 2.
Boy. And I'm trying to think of stuff that wasn't already on. But like the first answer I want to give, obviously, is Space Oddity by Bowie. But that's already on the Lonely Astronaut playlist. But that just seems like, the Lost Astronaut song. I don't know. I'm sitting in my office with like 3,000 CDs, and I'm overwhelmed by choice.
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah. I have to get back to you. And I hate to disappoint. I've got too much stuff to pick from. In addition to the what was it, 20 songs, I guess, that were on that playlist. The fans in the time since then have come up with tons more and have found stuff that I've never heard of that is perfect fit. So, I would love for, the fans to answer this and point me to things that I've never heard of.
Comment below.
Yes, please do. I feel I'm paralyzed by choice. I feel like I should have a good answer for this. And I love making mixtapes. It's one of my favorite things, but I put so much like thought into it. I can't do it spontaneously.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's completely okay. And you opened up the floor for a lot of people
please
to suggest their own songs.
I'm very serious about that. I want to hear.
Okay. The next question is from Roong. And the question is, I am a Korean player who is enjoying the Lifeline series very much. Do you have any thoughts on translating it into other languages? So I know you do this, but maybe you want to add some extra context to the translations that go on.
Again, this is much more Colin and Mars's department than mine. I know that we, when we were under the Big Fish umbrella, it was translated into 7 or 8 different languages. I know that now that we are out under our own shingle, that I want to say Korean was a language that we use, but I could be wrong about that. It is definitely something that we are interested in doing, as many languages as possible. There is always a cost to that. And so, again, those are the business decisions that are made, beyond my writer's den here. But yeah, we want as many people as possible to be able to enjoy it in their native language. So, if it is not in your native language and you want it to be, certainly, shoot us an email through the website and let us know about it, because that's how we find out that there's a need.
Cool. Okay, so who should I reach out for Hebrew translations?
Uh, Boy, I don't know.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
figure it out. It's fine.
give us an email. Like, again, we love that our fans are as involved as they are, and we want to do things for them that are cool. So if we can figure out that there's enough of a base that wants it in a new language, I think, we will seriously look into it.
Cool. I think like I'm so invested in the Lifeline universe that I would probably just like localize it myself. if I had the time, I would just sit and like find that that document that you said, like the tree of the entire first game, and then just translate all the bubbles into Hebrew.
More power to you. I always wonder how some of the references, like the pop culture references, translate to other languages, and they told me don't worry about it. So I try not to worry about it, but I have to think some of the stuff just totally falls flat.
Yeah.
Or maybe they get localized into references that make sense for, a different population. I don't know.
So I can tell you, like from experience, at least in Hebrew, that many of the things that are like kind of references in English never directly works in Hebrew. Because as opposed to English, Hebrew is a gendered language. There's like a male or female pronunciation associated with most words in Hebrew. Like table, for example, is male. Door is female. Like lots of stuff like that. So usually stuff don't translate like well, and that's why nerds, Hebrew speaking nerds, always have like this rage about movies that get translated, like their titles get translated to Hebrew, because it's never the same title, or it's always like a something that sounds way off, but tries to kind of adhere to kind of a direct translation. I think the most recent one that we had was the translation of the Ant-Man movie title, like the Quantumania one. I don't remember what it was, but I remember a lot of people in one of Facebook groups in Hebrew for geeks was such a huge cry out, like that the title of the video is so dumb in Hebrew. So yeah, that's my experience, at least.
Well, sadly, English is the only language that I am proficient in. So
that's cool. That's okay. Okay.
I'll try for a good Hebrew joke in the next one.
Okay. The next question is from Jay. We have two questions from Jay. The first question is, I'm curious if there's any planned expansion on the current world building. I'd love to know more about the quintessence, timeless monks, Tunguskites, etc.
Yeah. There, again, back in the day when there were more of us working on these things, we had big plans for all of that. I definitely want to get back to Arica's story at some point and talk about the quintessence and the timeless monks. We would love someday for Lila Sturgis and Daryl Gregory to be able to come back and do more work. There was a planned sequel to Crisis Line that we didn't get a chance to do back in the day. So yeah, I mean, there are bits and pieces of narrative out there that I would love to be able to tie together, and I guess it all just depends on how long we get to keep doing this. But it's cool to know that people want to see those things, that it's not just us kind of doing it for ourselves.
And the second question from Jay, which is, it kind of expands on the first one. Are you planning on writing about any new characters, or do you think it'll be mostly sequels from here on out?
I can tell you right now that I'm working on a new character, but I'm not going to tell you anything more than that.
We'll see.
I think we would like to have a healthy mix of sequels and new characters. So that, because, all these characters were new at one point. So how do you know you haven't met your favorite one yet?
Okay.
So yeah, I think both is the answer.
Cool. The next question is from Heather. And Heather asks, does Taylor have a crush on their Lifeline?
What was it? Speed, in that movie where they talked about people being attracted to people because they were in high pressure action situations. I think that probably it's fair to say that Taylor has a little bit of a crush on the Lifeline, just because they have been through so much and the Lifeline has helped them so much that Taylor can't help but have formed some sort of attachment. And I think it's fair to say from some of the stuff that I've read online that more than one Lifeline has a crush on Taylor. So it goes both ways. I think that we could probably make money hand over fist if I wrote a Taylor dating app. So.
Wow. That's very cool. I think for me, like there was always like this, I think in Silent Nights, it was this thing where you had like the choice at the beginning of treating Taylor as a complete stranger, or indicating in one of your answers that you know who Taylor is. And then it was like this thing like that, at least for me, Taylor is kind of like your best friend. You have like kind of best friend conversations. So I think for me, it was always like that little bit of fun. Even in Beside You in Time, I think also there's this indication at the beginning that you know who Taylor is, and not just being someone who just like meets Taylor right then and there. And I think for me, this continuation and this kind of sequeling of the games, like Taylor from all of those other games, and now you're kind of continuing the journey with them. I think for me that was like a good part of like forming that kind of relationship with Taylor, which was so cool. Like you have that. I think the best example I can give of this is like importing your saves from one game to another. Like games in the past, I think Dragon Age was one game that did this. In all 3 games, you could import your save from the previous game into the new one. Mass Effect was another game that did that, and even I think in The Witcher, I think from The Witcher 1 to The Witcher 2, and I don't remember if it was something you could have done in Witcher 3, because Witcher 3 was kind of a big open world game. But the fact that you could like do this import and then like continue storylines from one game to the next was always such a cool thing. Okay, so now we have a different question from someone who is anonymous. The name is anonymous, and this is kind of a shenanigans question. Hello, can I marry Taylor?
You know what? You can do whatever you want. It's yeah, for the right amount, I will write that story.
Ooh.
We can go back and forth on what that amount might be, but yeah, I think people deserve to marry Taylor if they want.
You heard it first, Anonymous. Reach out to Dave.
Yeah. Now I will say it's going to be a long distance relationship for quite a while yet.
Okay. The next question is from Allie, and Allie asks, are there any plans to incorporate the IRL gap in between Lifeline games into the story?
So it's again kind of a timeline question.
Yes.
Not really. I don't. I don't feel like we gain anything from doing that. So I would rather continue to just kind of fudge the time and tell a story as opposed to trying to account for all those lost years. But that's just my opinion. If people want to include that time because it feels right to them, then who am I to stop them?
Okay. Here's a question that I didn't know I needed the answer for until I've seen it. The question is from Sugar, and the question is, what was written in Chinese at the peak of the first Lifeline game? Will we ever find out?
Oh, gosh. I don't. Now my memory is Swiss cheese, so I vaguely remember this. I think it was not so much about what was written as just the fact that it was written in Chinese, which was supposed to be surprising because China does not have a space exploration arm in our present day. So you were supposed to be kind of weirded out that there was this spacecraft from from a superpower that hadn't achieved that in our present.
Okay.
That's the best of my memory from back. If I had something specific in mind, I do not remember it, but I think that was the purpose of that.
Okay, that's interesting. For me, that wasn't how I connected with that moment. For me, it was like, oh, so there were humans here. That was like my first realization, because when I played the game for the first time, I was like, wait, is the peak an alien structure? And then when you realize that there's Chinese writing over there, like you say, okay, so this is kind of man-made, human-made. So what is the deal of this place? Up until that moment, before you see the Chinese, I was like, so am I entering, is Taylor entering into an alien structure right now? So I don't know.
Yeah, it's again. I wish that my memory were better.
This question is from Annie, and the question is, "Hey Dave, I know you probably can't say much, but can you clue us in to what the future of the Lifeline series looks like? New characters, old ones returning, new storylines, etc." So I know you can't say much. Yeah. Okay, that's a great answer. Yes.
All of those things, yes. No, at this stage of what we're doing, I really don't feel like I can say anything. Other than, like I said earlier, what I'm writing is something new. It is not a character that you've played with before. Beyond that, it's probably premature to talk about anything except in very vague terms of saying that, like, yes, we do want to do sequels. Yes, we do want to continue the Green Saga. So yes.
So these were all the fan questions I had for you, Dave. Before I let you go, there is one little segment left. And that segment is Roll for Spoilers. So I'm going to ask you to provide us with any juicy detail that you want about Lifeline, the next games, or whatever it is people don't know, on a roll of the D20. And if I get a high number, it's your choice to provide us with any juicy detail. But I could also roll poorly, and that would mean not telling me anything or just lying to me. So what do you say? Should we give this a shot?
Let's give it a shot.
Okay. So I'm going to do this thing. I hope people can see the roll, and I'll just roll it. And I rolled a 2. So yeah, what do you say on a 2?
On a 2? Boy, I barely have to tell you anything.
Yes.
Let's see. So the thing that I'm writing currently contains one of the most exciting Zoom calls you could imagine.
Okay.
Because I know that everyone playing video games wants to play Zoom calls where you make the choices.
An exciting Zoom call in a game is so funny.
You rolled a 2, buddy. That's what you get.
Yeah. And this is the Dimension 20 dice, people. I didn't think they will disappoint me like this, but never mind. Okay, Dave, these were all the questions I had for you. Before I let you go, can you please tell us, for anyone who is listening to this, who is maybe not as familiar with the Lifeline series as I am, where they can find the games, and where do you want to point them from this interview?
You can find the games on the App Store, the Google App Store, or the Apple App Store. You can also find Lifeline Plus on Apple Arcade. We showed up there at the end of February and have been doing very well. So please come find us there. And the more of you that find us there, the more likely there'll be more of us there. So you can find us on the web at, I'm not looking at it right now, so I don't remember. I think it's lifeline.games.
That's what I remember too. I think so too.
Yes. Will you put the proper thing on the screen so people
For sure.
And then of course the Discord, which is a hip and happening place, a very active fan community full of lovely and amazing people, probably several of whom asked you questions today. And our Twitter, I'm sure you can put up on the screen. Our Facebook.
Yeah, everything will be on the screen.
You can put up on the screen. I don't have the mind to remember any of the actual addresses. But we're active out there on social media. And yeah, and I wish that I could tell you when our next thing is coming out. I will say I definitely think that before the end of this year, people will have a new fun game in their hands with an amazing Zoom call sequence. And I hope everyone loves it.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek Peek. Before I let you go, I want to thank the individuals who went the extra mile and became my patrons. So, without further ado,
Thank you to Arthur Morrill, Bob Prescott, Lexi Gardner, Cody Neville, Charlie Fisher, Stoat Dross, Laura Jane Hamilton, Maggie, Grace Bauer, Captain Caseno, Tyler Felsted, Ella Lubell, Mandy Kennedy, Ross Simpson, Jacob Koch, Emma Rose, D20 is my church, Patch Kelly, Sarah Kate Noel, Zachary Tyndall, Trevor Williams, and Kehos Alpha. If you want to join them, please head on over to patreon.com/TheOrenCoin, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!